Silence reigned in the vacuum of space, but aboard the Federation flagship Vigilant, the tense murmur of voices and the soft clinking of controls filled the air with a palpable urgency. Commander James Taylor stared out the panoramic view deck, his gaze fixed on the swirling maelstrom of the Triangulum Galaxy, a vast ocean of stars that now served as the backdrop for an impending war. With each report of Zorquan fleet movements, the knot in his stomach tightened. His home, once a thriving colony on the edges of this galaxy, had been reduced to ashes by these very foes, igniting a fire of vengeance within him that now threatened to consume all reason. The bridge of the Vigilant was alive with the glow of holographic displays and the urgent pacing of crew members. James' reflection in the glass was ghostly, superimposed over the endless cosmos, a man caught between his past and the dawning future. The scent of ozone and cold metal permeated the air, mingling with the undercurrent of fear and determination that charged the atmosphere. "Lieutenant Mira, status report on the enemy fleet," James commanded, his voice cutting through the ambient hum of the bridge operations. "Commander, we have detected advanced Zorquan warships, at least 30, moving into strategic positions around the Ceres belt," replied Lieutenant Mira, her voice steady despite the flicker of concern in her eyes. Her fingers flew over the luminescent controls, bringing up tactical displays that painted a grim picture of the overwhelming odds. James absorbed the information with a clenched jaw. Each red blip on the map was a dagger to the heart of human territory, a stark reminder of what was at stake. His crew, young and old, looked to him for orders, their faces etched with the gravity of their situation. He could see his own resolve mirrored in their eyes. This was not just a battle for survival, but a fight for retribution. "Prepare all hands for immediate battle readiness. Initiate defensive maneuvers Sigma 5. I want every ship in our fleet ready to jump on my mark," James instructed, his tone imbued with a command that brooked no argument but inspired confidence. The bridge burst into a flurry of activity. Officers relayed orders, and the dull throb of the ship's engines grew to a roar as energy diverted to shields and weaponry. Outside, the stars seemed to blur as the Vigilant and its accompanying vessels prepared to make their stand. James took a moment to gaze again at the galaxy before him. The Triangulum, with its billions of stars, was a reminder of the vastness of their struggle and the smallness of their existence within it. Yet, here they were, specks against the infinite, standing defiant. His thoughts were a tangle of strategy and memories, images of his lost home, the faces of those he had failed to save, and the burden of leadership that now rested on his shoulders. But amidst the turmoil, a surge of clarity broke through. This was where he was meant to be, in the heart of conflict, steering humanity through its darkest hours. As the chapter closes, the Vigilant transitions from a silent behemoth of steel and circuits into a beacon of human defiance and hope, its engines igniting with the fire of ancient stars, ready to carve a path through darkness and uncertainty. The looming battle was not just a test of military might, but a crucible that would forge the future of humanity and the galaxy. The cold, black canvas of space around the Vigilant was intermittently pierced by the stark, brilliant flashes of distant starbursts. As the ship maneuvered through the Ceres belt, a dense field of asteroids orbiting a lonely, forgotten sun, the tension among the crew reached a palpable crescendo. Commander James Taylor's eyes were fixed on the holographic screens displaying the movements of the Zorquan fleet. The shadows cast by the dim blue light of the command bridge danced over his features, reflecting the turbulent storm of his thoughts. The asteroid field served as a natural labyrinth, its chaotic, tumbling rocks providing both cover and hazard. The Vigilant and its fleet weaved through this cosmic maze, sensors pushed to their limits, searching for signs of the enemy. Lieutenant Myra's voice broke the silence, her tone a mix of urgency and control. "Contact. Enemy scouts detected at Vector 030 by 214. They're using the asteroids for concealment." James nodded sharply, his gaze never leaving the tactical display. "Deploy recon drones. I want a full sweep. Helm, adjust our heading to intercept. Let's not let them report back." The crew obeyed instantly, the familiar whir of machinery and soft beeps of engaged systems melding with the low hum of the engine. Outside, the deployed drones darted away like silverfish in a dark sea, their small forms quickly disappearing among the spinning rocks. Minutes stretched into hours as the Vigilant stalked its prey. The anticipation was a thick, heavy cloak around everyone's shoulders. Suddenly, a series of quick, bright flashes erupted from within the asteroid field, a silent, deadly exchange of fire between the drones and the Zorquan scouts. The bridge crew watched and held breaths as each explosion marked the end of a drone or a scout ship. "Report," James demanded, his voice cutting through the aftermath of the distant skirmish. "We've lost 3 drones, but all Zorquan scouts have been neutralized. No signals outgoing. We're clear, Mira reported, relief briefly touching her features before her expression set back into focused determination. James's mind raced as he processed the implications. They had achieved the element of surprise, but at the cost of revealing their position. Prepare for the possibility of an accelerated enemy advance. Inform all ships to tighten formation and enhance stealth protocols. I want us invisible among these rocks. As the fleet adjusted, the Vigilant pushed deeper into the asteroid belt, using larger asteroids as shields from potential enemy sensors. The bridge was bathed in a new layer of suspense, every officer acutely aware that the real battle was yet to come. James took a moment to confer with his senior strategists in the dim light of a secluded briefing room. "This is where we hold them," he stated firmly, pointing to a narrow pass within the asteroid field on the hologram. "It's our best chance to level the playing field. We'll use the asteroids to our advantage, hit them hard and fast, then pull back before they can regroup." Plans were quickly made, and traps set. The fleet, now silent and cloaked by the shadowy embrace of the asteroid field, waited for the enemy to enter the designated kill zone. James returned to the bridge, his expression one of steely resolve as he resumed his watch. The wait was excruciating. Every sensor sweep that returned clear increased the tension, the knowledge that the confrontation was inevitable and imminent gnawing at the crew's nerves. Then, without warning, a series of alarms blared through the Vigilant. The enemy was not only approaching, they were doing so in greater numbers than anticipated. "Battle stations. This is not a drill." James's voice boomed over the ship's comm system. As personnel rushed to their posts, the first silhouettes of Zorquan warships appeared, gliding ominously through the asteroid field. The battle for the series belt had begun. As the chapter concludes, the Vigilant and its fleet spring their ambush, unleashing a fierce barrage of firepower. Laser beams and missiles streak across space, illuminating the dark void with deadly beauty. Amidst the chaos, James stands resolute, a captain unyielded, guiding his fleet into the fray, their fates intertwined with the swirling dance of destruction among the stars. The debris of shattered Zorquan scouts drifted silently through the asteroid field, twinkling like morbid starlight against the backdrop of the expansive void. In the command center of the Vigilant, the aftermath of their first successful ambush hung in the air, a mixture of triumph and the sobering reality of the long battle ahead. Commander James Staylor stood resolute, his gaze piercing through the holographic maps and strategic displays that floated in the dimly lit room. "Damage report," James commanded, his voice calm yet carrying the weight of the impending challenges. "Minimal damage to our frigates, sir. All primary systems remain functional across the fleet," Lieutenant Mira responded, her eyes flickering between her commander and the status reports emanating soft, glowing light onto her focused face. James nodded, processing the information with a strategic mind. "Good. Prepare for Phase 2. It's time to bring our allies into play. We can't hold the belt alone if the main Zorquan force pushes through." The next hours were crucial. James initiated a secure communication channel to the neighboring systems, where potential allies awaited, a coalition of alien races who, like humanity, had suffered from Zorquan aggressions. The holoscreen flickered to life, revealing the varied faces of alien representatives, each bearing the marks of their distinct civilizations. "Greetings," James started, his voice firm yet diplomatic. "As you are aware, we have engaged the Zorquan fleet at the Ceres Belt. We seek your support to ensure our mutual security and to repel the invaders who threaten our homes." The negotiations were tense, with each faction expressing their concerns in terms. Bargains were struck with careful words and promises of mutual protection and resource sharing. The alliance was fragile, built upon the necessity of survival rather than trust. But it was enough. Agreements were made, and the Allied forces began their mobilization to join humanity's stand against the Zorquan armada. As the Vigilant prepared to integrate the new forces into their formation, an unexpected alert sounded through the bridge. "Sir, we have an anomaly on the sensors. It's a small craft, signature unknown, approaching fast." "Put it on screen," James ordered, stepping closer to the main viewport. The image that came into view showed a sleek, dart-like vessel, unlike any known to the Federation or its new allies. "Hail them." The craft didn't respond, but it slowed its approach, coming to a halt just outside the Vigilant's defensive perimeter. Tension mounted as the crew awaited its next move. Suddenly, the craft transmitted a signal, and a hollow projection appeared on the bridge, a humanoid figure, its features obscured by a cloak. "I come with a message from the Zorquan command," the figure spoke, its voice filtered and neutral. "Cease your resistance and surrender the belt." Refuse, and you face certain destruction as our main fleet is already en route, far larger than what you've faced. James's eyes narrowed. And if we agree to talk? He asked, probing for any hint of deception. The terms will be discussed upon your unconditional surrender, the envoy replied before the transmission cut abruptly, leaving a heavy silence on the bridge. James turned to his officers, his decision clear. We fight. Prepare all hands for a prolonged engagement. Inform our allies, the Zorquin are not negotiating in good faith. As the Allied reinforcements arrived, weaving their ships into the formation around the Vigilant, the sense of unity was palpable despite the underlying tensions and the uncertainty of trust among them. But the betrayal of the Zorquin envoy had solidified their resolve. Together, they would face the oncoming storm. The chapter closes as the first of the Allied ships take their positions, their colorful hulls a stark contrast against the gray asteroids. The combined fleet, now larger and more diverse, stood ready to defend the belt, their lasers and missiles poised for the battle that would determine their fates. In the command center, James reviewed the fleet's readiness, his expression one of grim determination. The next move was the enemy's, and they would be ready. The darkness of space around the Ceres belt seemed to swallow light whole, the blackness punctuated only by the faint glimmer of distant stars and the intermittent flash of shipborne weapons. Within this void, Commander James Staler's coalition fleet lay in wait, a motley assembly of ships from various civilizations, now bound by a common cause. The tension was palpable as each captain awaited the inevitable onslaught of the Zorquin armada. On the bridge of the Vigilant, James scrutinized the latest reconnaissance data scrolling across the tactical displays. The raw, silent beauty of the asteroid belt masked the strategic nightmare of its labyrinthine passageways, where danger could emerge from any shadow. It was here, according to ancient charts and a recently decrypted data relic, that a forgotten civilization had hidden a technology capable of tipping the scales in their favor. Lieutenant Mira, assemble a team. You're going on a retrieval mission, James ordered, pointing to a sector of the belt marked with cryptic symbols. There's an artifact located on asteroid Theta 5. It's supposed to enhance a ship's weapons systems significantly. Mira nodded, her face set with determination. Yes, sir. I'll take the Spectre and a small crew. We'll be swift. As Mira departed, James turned his attention back to the fleet, issuing commands to maintain their defensive perimeter. Each ship was a vital part of the intricate web of firepower and sensors designed to give them early warning of the Zorquin's approach. Meanwhile, aboard the stealth corvette Spectre, Mira and her team navigated through the asteroid field, their ship a silent wraith among the tumbling rocks. The journey was perilous, the ship's hull occasionally scraping against smaller debris, the sound a harsh reminder of the ever-present danger. Upon reaching Theta 5, the team disembarked in suits designed to protect them from the harsh environment of space. They moved with purpose across the asteroid's rugged surface, their path illuminated by beams of light cutting through the oppressive darkness. The artifact, according to the relic's data, was located deep inside a cavern that had once been part of a vast network of tunnels. Inside the cavern, the walls glimmered with traces of an unknown mineral, casting eerie shadows. As they reached a chamber at the heart of the asteroid, they found the artifact, a device encased in a crystal dome, its structure complex, with surfaces that seemed to absorb light and pulse with a life of its own. Looks like we found what we came for, Mira said, her voice echoing slightly in the helmet's comlink. Carefully, they extracted the device, ensuring not to trigger any ancient security measures that might have been left in place. Back on the Vigilant, James awaited the return of the team, his focus divided between the recovery mission and the reports of Zorquin scouts probing their defenses. When Mira finally returned, the artifact in tow, a spark of hope flickered through the fleet. We have it, sir, Mira reported, handing over the device to the ship's engineers. It's unlike anything we've seen. The engineers are figuring out how to integrate it with our systems. Do it fast. Time is something we don't have, James responded, turning his attention to the tactical display as alerts began to sound once more. The Zorquin fleet, it seemed, had grown impatient and was now advancing in force. The chapter closes as the engineers work frantically to adapt the ancient technology to the Vigilant's weapon systems. Outside, the first signs of the Zorquin advance appear on the horizon, a multitude of ships breaking through the asteroid field, their intentions as clear as the weapons they bore. James watched, his resolve hardening. With the new weapon, the upcoming battle was not just a fight for survival, but a chance to turn the tide decisively. The void of space near the Ceres belt had transformed from a quiet graveyard of drifting asteroids to a thunderous arena of war. As the Zorquan fleet advanced, their ships cleaving through the asteroid field with terrifying precision, the Allied fleet under Commander James Staylor braced for the onslaught. The ancient technology, now partially integrated into the Vigilant's main weapons system, hummed with a mysterious energy, its true potential yet to be unleashed. On the bridge of the Vigilant, James watched the approaching enemy fleet, a complex mix of dread and determination settling over him. He knew this battle would likely decide the fate of the entire belt and, potentially, the balance of power in the region. All ships, this is Staylor. Hold your positions and wait for my command. Today, we fight not just for territory, but for our future, he broadcasted across the Allied fleet. The Zorquan ships, massive behemoths of metal and energy, began their assault with a barrage of plasma fire that lit up the darkness of space like artificial stars. The Allied ships, smaller and more agile, dodged between the asteroids, using the natural terrain to their advantage. The Vigilant, at the heart of the formation, directed the fleet's movements, its newly enhanced weapons system ready to test its mettle. The first clash was violent and chaotic. Zorquan destroyers, using their superior firepower, blasted through smaller Allied ships, turning them into fiery debris. However, the Allied fleet was nimble, retaliating with guerrilla tactics that harried the larger ships, striking at vulnerabilities and retreating before any counterattacks could be mounted. Amidst the fury of battle, James coordinated the movements of his fleet with precision. Mira, take your squadron and flank the enemy's left wing. Draw them into the nebula. We'll use the gas clouds to our advantage, he ordered, his eyes scanning the multiple displays that showed the unfolding battle. Lieutenant Mira's squadron, a mix of human and alien vessels, darted towards the nebula, a vast cloud of gas and dust that bordered the battlefield. As they entered, the Zorquan ships pursued, only to find their sensors jammed by the dense particulate matter. Mira's squadron used this to devastating effect, launching surprise attacks that disabled several enemy ships before vanishing into the swirling mist of the nebula. Back at the central engagement zone, James waited for the opportune moment to deploy the ancient weapon. As a Zorquan dreadnought, the flagship of their fleet, moved to engage the Vigilant directly, James seized the chance. Now, activate the device, he commanded. The energy within the Vigilant surged, coursing through the ship with a palpable force. The weapon, a brilliant beam of pure, concentrated energy, shot forth from the Vigilant, piercing through space and striking the Zorquan dreadnought. The impact was immediate and devastating. The dreadnought's shields flickered and failed, and the hull disintegrated under the onslaught, the ship breaking apart and igniting in a spectacular explosion that sent shockwaves through the nearby ships. The destruction of the Zorquan flagship sent a ripple of shock and confusion through their ranks. Seizing the momentum, James rallied his fleet for a full assault. All ships, advance. Push them back while they're reeling. With renewed vigor, the Allied fleet pressed forward, the Vigilant leading the charge. The battle raged for hours, the space around the Ceres belt alive with the flashes of gunfire and explosions. Slowly, through sheer tenacity and the advantage provided by the ancient technology, the tide turned in favor of James and his allies. As the Zorquan forces began a disorganized retreat, battered and significantly reduced, James allowed himself a brief moment to breathe. The nebula glowed softly in the background, a silent witness to the fierce battle that had transpired in its shadow. The chapter closes as the Allied fleet, victorious but not without losses, regroups and assesses the damage. James stands on the bridge of the Vigilant, looking out at the scattered remnants of enemy ships drifting through space, a grim reminder of the cost of victory. The battle for the Ceres belt was over, but the war for their homes was just beginning. As the last of the Zorquan warships retreated into the depths of space, a solemn silence fell over the Vigilant. The victory had been hard-won, with the debris field around the Ceres belt serving as a stark testament to the brutal cost of the conflict. Commander James Staylor stood at the viewport, his eyes tracing the slow drift of broken vessels and shattered lives lost in the pursuit of freedom and security. The bridge of the Vigilant was bathed in a soft, blue light, casting long shadows across the faces of the crew. Each member was acutely aware of the sacrifice it had taken to achieve their Pyrrhic victory. James turned from the window, his gaze sweeping over his team, who were quietly managing the aftermath operations. Begin damage assessment protocols and send out search and recovery teams. We need to account for all personnel and assist any ships in distress, he ordered, his voice carrying a weight that was both a command and a shared condolence for the fallen. As the fleet mobilized to carry out recovery efforts, James retired to his office to transmit a report to the Allied commanders in the Terran Galactic Federation. The report detailed the battle, the utilization of the ancient technology, and the significant reduction of the Zorquin threat in the sector. However, it also emphasized the need for continued vigilance and support to prevent any future incursions. During the next several days, the Vigilant and its allies worked tirelessly. Engineers and medics from various species collaborated in a testament to the unity forged through shared adversity. The once hostile nebula now served as a backdrop to a scene of frenetic activity as ships limped back to operational status and crews salvaged what they could from the wreckage. James took a moment to visit the medical bay, where wounded crew members from different races were receiving treatment. The sight of the injured, some gravely, was a sobering reminder of the cost of command. Yet, amidst the pain, there was an undeniable sense of camaraderie and resilience. James spoke to each of them, offering words of gratitude and encouragement, his presence a reassurance that their sacrifices were honored and not in vain. With the sector secured and the immediate threats neutralized, James convened a meeting with his senior staff and the Allied leaders via a secure communication network. The meeting focused on the strategic planning of defense installations throughout the belt and the integration of the ancient technology into Allied defenses, ensuring that the belt would never again be a soft target for any aggressor. As the fleet began to stabilize and plans for a fortified defensive network took shape, James received a communique from the Terran Galactic Federation, commending his leadership and confirming additional support for the beleaguered sector. This news brought a rare smile to James's face, a brief respite from the weight of his duties. In the final moments of the chapter, James stood once again at the viewport of the Vigilant, looking out at the slowly rotating asteroid belt bathed in the light of a distant sun. The nebula beyond shimmered with the colors of gas and dust, a silent witness to the history made in its midst. He realized that while the battle was over, the war for peace was an ongoing effort, one that required not just strength, but also wisdom and unity. James reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point, knowing that each decision, each sacrifice, had reshaped the future of an entire region. And as he turned away from the viewport, back to the tasks that awaited him, he carried with him a renewed sense of purpose. For in the vast, often unforgiving expanse of space, the light of even a single star could guide the way forward for many.